Take this job and shove it.
This is Jobcast Radio. I am Mike Baumgartner, your Work-Life Survival Sage, the Chief Executive Officer of the Work-Life Survival Center, and your host. If you've got a problem at work, if you've got a problem with life and dealing with work, this is the place that you need to come to. You need help to put your resume together, deal with an interview, or you've got a situation at work that just doesn't feel right. Are you being sexually harassed? Are you being discriminated against? This is your resource to getting the answers that you need so you can deal with that kind of a situation. Give me a call, 304-867-4142. Again, 304-867-4142. So find me on Facebook. We have a fan page. Just do a search, Jobcast Radio. You can follow my tweets on Twitter. Again, the name Jobcast Radio. And you can always shoot me an email, mike@jobcastradio.com. Well, it is still January 2011. We have just sort of kicked off the year. Our first episode this year was all about putting together your resume. We're going to continue on sort of the basics for the next couple of weeks on how you deal with things like getting an interview, networking, and things like that. Just kind of doing a refresher course on all the things that are going on. But I got an interesting email this week that I wanted to share with you, my listeners, because it is something that we don't talk about all that often here on the show, but it is something that happens probably to more of you than you would think. I got an email from a gentleman by the name of Andy. Andy has been applying for a job, and he actually applied for a job that he really, really enjoyed. And I got a chance to talk to him. He said the interview he thought went really well and that the people there were all excited about him. Now, let me just take a quick side note. That does not necessarily mean you're going to get the job. But when people are saying at the end of the interview, you know, we're going to be in touch, we're going to make this happen quickly, or you'll hear from us by Friday, that's always a good sign. But the problem that Danny has been having, apparently, is that great interviews are fairly easy for him, and I could tell by talking on the phone. He's very good at communicating. He's very good on the phone. I would imagine he would interview well, and if he knows his stuff, I would imagine he'd be pretty convincing. But he's not getting the jobs. Now, he's in an industry that is fairly tight-knit, and you'll know, those of you who are in specific industries, and I'm talking things like truck drivers, transportation, supply chain, e-commerce, financial, everybody knows everybody. And he is beginning to think, and actually he did some research, that one of the companies he used to work for is giving him a bad reference. Now, let's face it, your resume should have every place that you've been working for and all the companies that you've worked with. And unfortunately, about 4 years ago, he had a job that didn't last all that long, and there was a bit of a falling out. Now, he admitted to me he was not as mature now as he is now back then, and that he was probably a little cocky, and he definitely told them when he thought that things were not doing the way that he thought they should be done, and that he had better ideas, and that he could save the company money by bringing forward great ideas. Well, as I've said in past shows, you go into a company, and in the first couple of months, you're telling them, hey, I have better ideas than you have. That is not going to engender friends in the company. And he thinks that this sort of happened, and it ended up that the company and he parted ways, and it was a bad cultural fit. They were kind of aggravated with him. He was already looking to see if he could have gotten a promotion about 6-8 months into the job. And as a result, he applied for a promotion, and I didn't get all the details on it, but he didn't get the promotion. And they basically said, look, we don't think things are working out between you and us. Let's just part ways. He agreed, went on with his life. However, and he did a little bit of research, he thinks this company is giving basically some warning signs when companies call up asking for a reference. Now, how do you deal with that? Well, number one, how do you even know that that is happening? Now, I guarantee you, and I have been in this business a long time, this happens more than you could possibly imagine. Many, many companies. Look, let me take it from the side of the company. If I am going to hire somebody, and I'm going to pay you $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year, I want to find out as much dirt about you as I can, because I want to know if I'm hiring somebody who's great or I'm hiring a moron who just happens to just look like he's the best candidate. And I want to know if I have a problem child early on, actually before I extend an offer. And I think that this is what is happening to Andy. So Andy called up his company and pretended not to be him. He called up this company, which happened to have been a transportation company. He posed as a recruiter saying, look, we are interested in hiring a guy named Andy. We understand that he used to work for you. Can you tell us a little bit about him? Now, he spoke to the HR person, which is the way it should be. And the HR person said, well, yeah, we just sort of parted ways. We terminated him, which, by the way, when a company says that they have terminated you, it doesn't mean they fired you. When you quit your job, you've terminated your employment. When they lay you off, they have terminated your employment. When you hear the word terminated, it doesn't necessarily mean they fired you. Now, it might mean they fired you. They could be using the polite word for they fired you. But the word terminated, hopefully, is something that when your company hears it, they don't immediately assume that you have been fired. Now, most companies have what's called a neutral reference policy. That means companies basically won't tell anyone anything about past employees other than maybe the hiring dates, when you were hired, when you were let go. Maybe they'll confirm salary. A lot of companies will actually have you sign a piece of paper before you leave the company, actually stipulating what they can say about you. Because companies get sued all the time. Because a bad reference, if you don't get the job, well, you've lost income. And if it's a bad reference that is untrue, it can be actionable. And people have run to attorneys and said, this company is saying bad things about me. I didn't get a job. I have been impacted. The lawyer sues and the former employee wins, which is why most companies will not allow a manager or a supervisor to do a reference. It all has to be done through HR. So getting back to Andy's story, Andy called this company, spoke to the HR person, and didn't quite let go with the fact, okay, he was let go on this day. And by the way, they also gave bad information. They gave the wrong title for him. He tells me that he was a senior, or a director. They said he was a manager. That is something that immediately makes him look like a liar on his resume. I wouldn't hire him. People exaggerate titles all the time. So that, just as a side note, might have been the reason he's not getting a job. But further, he asked the HR person, well, why did you let this guy go? Was he good? Was he bad? And the HR person puts him on hold, calls the manager, and then comes back on the phone and says, yeah, he was just a bad cultural fit. And he just didn't quite work out here. But that's really all that I can say. Well, as a hiring manager, sometimes that's all I need, because that screams to me, you're a troublemaker. And frankly, I don't need a troublemaker on my payroll. And unless I have spoken to Andy during the interview and have an understanding of what to expect, I may not hire Andy. Number one, the title's wrong. Number two, the company just hinted to me that he didn't fit in. And I have no other basis. Now, a good company that really likes Andy should call him back and say, hey, I had a conversation with a past employer. This is what they told me. What can you tell me about it? And give Andy a chance to explain himself. And it happens all the time. You can get into a company and the culture just doesn't work. I have had jobs that I thought I was going to rip my eyes out because I did not know that the culture of that particular company was so what's the nicest word? Neurotic. And that my boss was a passive-aggressive control freak. It happens. So here is what I had told Andy. Andy is now aware that this particular company will say that he, didn't fit within the culture. He needs to, on future interviews, get ahead of that message, so that when he is interviewing for a job, he should be actively saying, hey, I worked for this company, this is where I was at, but I just didn't fit in. And I felt that it was probably best, and they agreed that we part ways. And then be able to explain how that cultural difference existed, at least in positive terms, as for him, so that when they do the reference, there is no surprise. Nobody likes a surprise on a reference. And I, as a manager, I'm going to call every company that I know you work for. And if I can find your supervisor, if I can find a friend who knows that supervisor, I'm going to backdoor it, and I'm going to try and find a way to find out whether or not you're a good employee or a bad employee. So, word of advice, if you're not getting a job and you've had a couple of jobs that haven't gone well for you, you may want to either call the company, disguise your voice, and you're not breaking any laws, just asking for a reference, or have a friend do it to try and find out what the company is giving out in information. If they're giving out inaccurate information, give me a call, because there are things you should do to correct it. We'll be back.
Take this job and shut it.